It had been over 40 years since the world last saw Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier face off in the ring. 3 epic battles had defined an era, filled with rivalry, tension, and moments that would be remembered forever. But today, on a quiet stage far removed from roaring arenas and blinding lights, the 2 legends were about to meet again. Nobody knew what would happen. Would the ghosts of the past resurface? Would old pride or grudges get in the way? The air was thick with anticipation. The venue was modest but buzzing with energy. Cameras lined the edges, capturing every angle, yet the focus was simple: 2 men, decades older, carrying the weight of their shared history. The crowd murmured softly, some whispering names they hadn't spoken in years. Others held their breath, sensing that what was about to unfold wasn't just a meeting of champions, but a collision of memories, emotions, and humanity itself. A hush fell when Ali appeared first. The room seemed to lean forward instinctively. He walked with the same effortless confidence he always had, shoulders relaxed, eyes calm, stride steady. His presence commanded attention without a word, a quiet power that filled every corner of the room. People craned their necks, some barely daring to breathe. It wasn't just Ali, it was the aura of a man who had faced every storm life could throw at him, unshaken, fearless, and wise. Then Frazier entered. The crowd stirred again, quieter this time, but the tension doubled. 40 years had passed, yet the memories were fresh. His expression was cautious but strong, the same determination that had earned him respect from millions. The 2 men's eyes met across the room, and for a brief moment, time itself seemed to slow. Every heartbeat, every whisper, every breath felt amplified. The audience could almost hear the echoes of their fights, the shouts, the cheers, the history of 2 warriors intertwined. No words had been spoken, yet the stage was set. The air crackled with emotion, a mix of curiosity, excitement, and something deeper, anticipation of a moment that would be remembered forever. Everyone watching knew this wasn't just another public appearance. Something monumental was about to unfold, and only one question lingered after 40 years. What happens when Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier finally face each other again, not in the ring but as men? The answer nobody knew yet, and in the next few minutes, every eye in the room would be drawn to them, and every heart would feel the weight of a history that had been decades in the making. To understand the weight of this moment, you have to go back decades. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier weren't just boxers, they were icons, forces of nature whose fights transcended the sport. Their rivalry was legendary, etched into history as one of the most intense in boxing. In 1971, the world witnessed the fight of the century, a battle that carried not just the power of their fists, but the pride, politics, and passions of a generation. Ali, the outspoken, charismatic champion, had been stripped of his title for refusing to fight in Vietnam. Frazier, relentless and steadfast, was the undefeated heavyweight waiting in the ring. That night, every punch, every dodge, every jab was more than a sport, it was history unfolding in real time. Then came the rematch, the 1974 Super Fight 2, another clash of titans. Ali came back stronger, faster, and smarter, but Frazier's grit was unyielding. Each man pushed the other to their absolute limit, testing endurance, willpower, and courage. And finally, in 1975, the Thrilla in Manila delivered a battle so brutal that even those ringside would never forget it. Both fighters walked away battered, exhausted, but with a mutual, unspoken respect that only warriors of their caliber could feel. They were enemies in the ring, yes, but outside of it, they were bound by the extraordinary journey of their rivalry, 2 men who had given everything to the sport and to each other. Decades passed. The world changed. The fights became history lessons, and the crowds that once roared now whispered their names in reverence. Ali battled Parkinson's disease, facing every challenge with courage, humor, and grace. Frazier, too, lived a life of triumphs and struggles, carrying the pride of his victories and the memory of his defeats. And yet, despite the passage of time, their names remained inseparable. Mention one and the other follows. Speak of one fight and the world remembers the other. Now, 40 years later, the 2 men were about to meet again. But this time there were no gloves, no judges, no championship belts. There was only history, respect, and humanity. The room held its collective breath as the audience realized the significance of this reunion. This wasn't a promotional stunt. It wasn't a fight. It was something far more profound, a meeting of souls who had shared a lifetime of challenges, triumphs, and lessons. Every person watching felt it, the weight of decades condensed into a single room. Every whisper carried the echoes of their battles. Every glance reminded the world of the courage, strength, and dignity both men had embodied. It was a history lesson, yes, but also a promise that time could heal, that respect could endure, and that even the fiercest rivalries could transform into something greater. As Ali and Frazier drew closer to each other, The audience couldn't help but wonder, after all these years, after all the punches and the glory and the pain, what would these two legends do when they finally stood face to face once more? The room was silent now, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was heavy with anticipation, like the pause before a storm breaks. Every eye in the venue was fixed on the entrance. Ali had already appeared, calm, composed, his presence commanding without a single word. Now all that remained was Frazier stepping into the same space that had once witnessed battles that defined an era. As Frazier walked in, there was a subtle shift in the air. The audience leaned forward instinctively, holding their breath. 40 years of history, rivalry, and mutual respect hung between them like an invisible cord, pulling everyone into the moment. Frazier's steps were measured, his face composed yet reflective. Decades of triumph and struggle were etched into every line of his features. He wasn't stepping into a ring tonight. He was stepping into a shared memory, a living history, and an opportunity that only time could have created. The crowd murmured softly. Some held back tears before the moment had even begun. Older fans remembered shouting at televisions during the fights, waving flags, cheering with every punch thrown. Younger viewers, who had only read about these legends in books or online, felt a wave of awe as they realized they were witnessing history being reunited in real life. It was surreal. Every camera click, every whispered name, every shifting gaze felt magnified. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a collision of legacies. Ali turned slowly to face Frazier. Their eyes met across the room, and for a heartbeat, neither moved. The seconds stretched longer than time itself, and it felt as if the past and present were holding hands, merging into one. Memories of fights, training sessions, and personal struggles seemed to flash across their minds simultaneously. The audience could almost see it, the years of rivalry, the moments of triumph, the mutual understanding born only through shared adversity. Every small gesture now carried monumental weight. Ali's slight nod, Frazier's careful step forward, the subtle rise of a smile on one face, the tightening of eyes on the other. It was as if decades of history were compressed into a single instant. Cameras captured every angle, but no lens could fully contain the emotion in the room. Even the air seemed to hum with electricity. People whispered, "This is it. They're finally here. The legends are together." The crowd felt the tension build as Ali took a step closer. Frazier mirrored him. No words yet, just the approach. Each movement was deliberate, respectful, almost ceremonial. This was not a fight. This was the weight of time, the gravity of legacy, the culmination of a rivalry that had defined their lives. And yet, there was a softness too, a quiet acknowledgement that whatever had happened in the ring was only a part of their story. Life had given them a chance for closure, for reconciliation, for humanity beyond sport. And then, the first hands reached toward each other. Slowly, deliberately. Every eye in the room followed, every heart beat faster. It was a handshake that carried decades of pain, pride, respect, and unspoken words. The hush lifted slightly, replaced by the softest murmur of awe. People realized that what they were witnessing wasn't just a meeting of legends. It was a moment of healing, a reunion that transcended boxing. The crowd held its collective breath, sensing the monumental significance of what was unfolding. Every micro-expression mattered, the curl of a smile, the tear forming in a corner of an eye, the faint shake of a hand. Ali and Frazier had approached, and in that approach, they had already begun rewriting the narrative. The audience knew something extraordinary was about to happen next, a moment that would leave them speechless, teary, and inspired. The room seemed to shrink as Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier stood face to face. 40 years of history, rivalry, and unspoken tension hung between them like a tangible presence. For a moment, neither spoke. Every person in the audience felt the weight of time, the decades of triumphs, defeats, struggles, and glory compressed into this single, extraordinary instant. Ali's eyes, always sharp yet full of warmth, softened slightly. He raised a hand in the smallest of gestures, a nod of acknowledgement, a signal that the past no longer held them hostage. Frazier, equally measured, responded with a subtle exhale, letting go of years of tension he hadn't realized he'd carried. The room held its breath. Every camera clicked in silence, trying, and failing, to capture the emotion fully. Finally, Ali spoke. His voice, calm and resonant, carried the same presence that had electrified arenas decades ago. "Joe," he said softly, "it's been a long time." Simple words, but in them was the weight of a lifetime. Frazier's lips curved into the faintest smile, a mixture of nostalgia and relief. "Muhammad," he replied, voice steady but quiet, too long. That was all. And yet, in those few syllables, a world of history, rivalry, and respect was conveyed. The two men inched closer, their eyes never leaving each other. Ali extended a hand, not for a fight, not for dominance, but for recognition, respect, and reconciliation. Frazier grasped it firmly, and the handshake lingered. Long enough to communicate something no words ever could. We've been through hell, but we're still standing. We're still men. We're still human. The audience, already on the edge of their seats, felt an audible shift in the energy. Some pressed cameras closer, though they knew no photograph could capture the depth of this moment. Others simply wiped tears from their eyes. The realization hit this was bigger than boxing. This was history meeting humanity. Ali and Frazier weren't here to relive old fights. They were here to show that respect, even after decades of rivalry, could triumph over time, anger, and pride. Ali leaned in slightly, voice softer now, almost a whisper meant for Frazier alone. "I've missed this," he said. "Not the fights, not the glory, but this moment with you. Face to face, man to man." Frazier's eyes glistened as he replied, "I know, I've carried so much, maybe too much. But I'm glad we're here now." The words weren't dramatic, but their power was undeniable. Years of tension, expectation, and history were released in a single, intimate exchange. Then came the small gestures, the subtle nods, the quick smiles, the almost imperceptible squeeze of the hand. These two men, once adversaries, now shared an unspoken bond forged in sweat, pain, and endurance. Every member of the audience felt it. The emotional gravity was palpable. Children watching through screens would grow up knowing that even the fiercest rivalries could end with respect. Adults who remembered the original fights were moved in ways that words could not fully describe. For the first time, the legends spoke in a language beyond boxing. Their first words weren't about who won, who lost, or who dominated. They were about acknowledgement, forgiveness, and humanity. And in that moment, every person present knew they were witnessing history, not of sport, but of character. The room felt almost sacred. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier stood facing each other, hands still clasped, eyes locked. The silence was profound, the kind that makes every heartbeat thunder louder than any cheer in an arena. This wasn't about titles, belts, or money. This was about history, humanity, and redemption, a culmination of everything their rivalry had ever meant. Ali's voice broke the silence, low but powerful, carrying decades of experience, respect, and wisdom. "Joe," he said softly, "we fought in the ring, yes. We gave the world those battles. But today, it's not about fighting. It's about seeing the man I faced across the canvas as a human being. It's about respect." Frazier nodded, swallowing hard. Memories flashed across his mind. The thundering crowds, the grueling training, the pain and sweat. But now, standing here, he realized something more profound than any victory or defeat. The true legacy wasn't in the punches thrown, but in the respect that endured. "Muhammad," he replied, voice quivering slightly, "all these years I held on to things I shouldn't have. But now, I see it differently. You and I, we were both warriors. We were just men." The room seemed to exhale collectively. Cameras clicked, flashes flickered, but nobody paid attention. They were all caught in the intimacy of this reunion. Ali leaned closer, a warm, gentle smile on his face. "And that's what matters, Joe. Not who won, not who lost. It's that we stood tall. We gave everything, and we never lost our souls in the process. That's the real fight we fought." Frazier's eyes glistened, tears threatening to spill. He stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on Ali's shoulder. "You were always more than a fighter, Muhammad. You were a teacher. You taught the world lessons that went far beyond boxing. And now, here we are, face to face again, and I finally understand it all." Ali nodded, his expression solemn but kind. "We all have our battles, Joe. Some we fight in the ring, some in life, some in our hearts. Today isn't about what happened before. Today is about honoring what we learned, about carrying respect forward, about letting go of what no longer serves us." The crowd, many of whom had been holding back tears, now wiped eyes openly. Older fans whispered memories aloud, some shaking their heads in disbelief at the moment they were witnessing. Younger viewers, captivated by the sheer humanity of it, leaned forward, unable to look away. Everyone felt it, the enormity of history, and the delicate beauty of reconciliation. Then Ali did something unexpected. He stepped back slightly, but his eyes never left Frazier's. "Let this be a reminder," he said, "that the toughest battles aren't always fought with fists. They're fought in the heart. They're fought with understanding, forgiveness, and respect. And the victory is in how we treat each other." Frazier exhaled, a smile breaking through the emotion. "Muhammad, thank you for everything." Ali's voice softened, almost a whisper meant for all to hear. "Joe, the honor has always been mine. And today we both win." For a long moment, the two legends simply stood there, absorbing the gravity of what had just happened. The audience felt it too, a rare, profound moment where history and humanity collided. Cameras recorded it, microphones captured it, but nothing could truly convey the weight of what had transpired. In that moment, Ali and Frazier reminded the world that some reunions transcend sport. Some moments teach lessons that last a lifetime, and some tears, those shed quietly, for respect and understanding, speak louder than any roar of a crowd ever could. The moment Ali and Frazier embraced the lessons of their past, the room slowly exhaled. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs into soft applause, and the applause grew as people realized they had just witnessed something extraordinary. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a living history lesson, a demonstration of respect, reconciliation, and the power of shared humanity. Fans near the front rows were stunned into silence, tears brimming in their eyes. Older viewers who had seen the fights live or on old broadcasts remembered every punch, every moment of triumph and defeat. The younger generation, many only familiar with their names from documentaries and stories, were seeing history come alive before their eyes. Cameras clicked, phones recorded, but no lens could truly capture the depth of what had transpired. Reporters jotted down notes frantically, their pens struggling to keep up with the emotion in the room. This isn't just a reunion of two fighters, one whispered into a recorder. It's a lesson for the world on respect, humility, and the true meaning of legacy. Interviews with witnesses would later flood newspapers, social media, and television broadcasts. Clips would be replayed for years to come, not because of the fame of the two men, but because of the lesson in human dignity they had delivered. Ali and Frazier took a few moments to speak with fans, their smiles gentle, their gestures patient. Every autograph, every handshake, every nod carried the weight of decades. Each fan who approached left changed, as if they had received a personal message about courage, humility, and respect. It was a ripple effect, one small, intimate moment creating waves that spread far beyond the room. Outside, crowds began to gather, having heard of the reunion through local media and word of mouth. People craned their necks, hoping for a glimpse of the legends. Ali, ever conscious of his fans, waved, smiled, and acknowledged each person with warmth. Frazier followed suit, his own smile betraying the pride and nostalgia he felt. The two men had once fought for glory in the ring, but now they were creating a new kind of triumph, one of reconciliation, inspiration, and shared humanity. Even staff members who had been tasked with logistics and coordination found themselves affected. The event, meant to be a simple reunion, had turned into a transformative moment. They whispered to each other, "Did you see that? This is history." The energy was electric, yet deeply human. It wasn't showmanship, it was authenticity, the kind that leaves hearts racing and eyes brimming with tears. As Ali and Frazier departed, walking side by side toward their vehicles, the crowd followed in hushed reverence. People didn't rush, they didn't push. They walked with a quiet awe, carrying with them the weight of what they had seen. Conversations began to change too. Older fans shared memories with children, narrating the fights, the tension, and now the redemption. Younger people absorbed not just the history but the humanity, the courage it takes to let go of the past and embrace respect, even after decades of rivalry. By the time the two legends had disappeared from view, the room, the street, and even the media outlets were buzzing with a single, unifying thought. History isn't just written in victories and losses. It's written in the moments we choose to act with dignity, kindness, and respect. And today, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier had taught the world what legacy truly means. That day, every person who had witnessed the reunion felt changed. Some whispered about courage, others about humility, but all of them carried the same realization: greatness isn't measured by how many fights you win. It's measured by how you treat people when the cameras are off and the crowd is silent. The reunion had ended, but its echoes lingered everywhere. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier had walked away, yet the room, the street, and every heart that had witnessed the moment were still full of their presence. People talked in hushed tones, reliving every gesture, every word, every subtle expression. It wasn't just about seeing two legends meet, it was about feeling the humanity behind the fame, the lessons behind the rivalry. Fans lingered, unwilling to let the moment fade. They shared stories, connecting generations through the thread of history that had been woven in front of them. Grandparents recounted the fights of the 1970s. Young adults described the impact of seeing these giants finally reconcile, and children listened wide-eyed, learning a lesson far beyond sports that respect, compassion, and humility endure longer than any championship belt. In quiet corners, people reflected personally. The lessons of the reunion weren't abstract, they resonated on a deeply human level. Ali had shown that courage doesn't always mean stepping into the ring. Sometimes it's walking towards someone you once viewed as an opponent, opening your heart, and choosing connection over conflict. Frazier had shown that strength isn't just in your fists, it's in your ability to forgive, to acknowledge your shared humanity, and to embrace the lessons of time. News outlets picked up the story immediately. Headlines proclaimed, "Legends reunited," A moment of history. Ali and Frazier teach the world about respect. Yet even as journalists debated who had made the first move, who had smiled first, who had spoken, the real story was far simpler. Two men, once rivals, had reminded the world of what it means to be human. Comments flooded social media. Viewers wrote about tears, chills, and heartwarming realizations. Clips of their handshake, their first words, and their smiles were shared millions of times, inspiring people who would never set foot in that room, but still felt its impact. Ali's words during the reunion echoed through the crowd and across the world. The toughest battles aren't fought with fists. They're fought in the heart, and the victory is in how we treat each other. Those words became a mantra for many, a reminder that greatness isn't just measured in championships or fame, it's measured in compassion, respect, and courage. Frazier, walking back to his car, reflected silently on what had occurred. Years of rivalry, tension, and competition had been replaced with understanding, acknowledgement, and connection. He realized that the moments that truly defined a life were not the battles won or lost, but the ones in which hearts were opened, minds were changed, and bridges were built. For him, for Ali, and for everyone witnessing, this reunion was the final round that neither of them had fought in the ring, but one they had won together. In the days that followed, the ripple effect continued. Fans shared the story with friends, schools used clips to teach lessons about history, sportsmanship, and respect, and families discussed what it truly meant to honor others, even rivals. Ali and Frazier had sparked something far greater than nostalgia. They had sparked reflection, empathy, and a reminder that time can heal wounds if hearts are willing. Even the venues that hosted the reunion reported the lingering emotional impact. Staff members, who had organized logistics and expected a simple meet and greet, spoke of the profound lessons they had personally taken away. Witnesses admitted they had cried quietly, felt chills, or simply sat in awe, realizing that they had been privileged to watch two living legends create a new kind of legacy, one built not on power or fame but on humanity. And so, the story of Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier's reunion became more than a headline. It became a lesson life offers, moments where courage, humility, and respect can triumph over time, conflict, and pride. Some battles end with applause, some end in tears, and some end with understanding. But the victories that endure forever are those of the heart. As viewers across the world reflected on the reunion, the moral was clear: you are defined not just by your achievements, but by how you treat others, especially those you once saw as opponents. True greatness comes from compassion, humility, and the courage to open your heart. Ali and Frazier reminded the world that legacy is built in these moments, and that respect once given can echo across generations. For decades to come, this reunion would be remembered not for the fights they had, but for the humanity they displayed. And that is the lesson every person, young or old, could carry into their own lives. Greatness isn't just in what you win, it's in what you give.